The bus was late. Again, she sat on the same broken bench she had used for the past 3 years. A torn scarf wrapped around the lower half of her face. Only her eyes were visible, sharp, silent, always watching. Every time the sun hit the right angle, the edge of the burn on her neck peeked out from behind the cloth. That was enough for people to keep their distance. No one ever asked her name, no one ever sat beside her. It was like she didn't exist until someone needed someone to mock. "Hey, you forgot your face at home," a boy had once shouted. From a passing rickshaw, she didn't flinch. She never did. She just tightened the scarf and looked the other way. But today was different. She wasn't going to the factory. She wasn't going to the pharmacy where people whispered after she left. Today, she carried a folded paper in her hand with bold black letters. Armed Forces Female Entrance Program. It had taken her months to find the form, longer to hide it from her mother, and even longer to fill it out with trembling fingers. She knew no one would believe her. Even she didn't believe herself. But after what happened last summer, something inside her had snapped. She had watched a soldier wrap his arms around a little girl, his daughter maybe. The way he picked her up, carried her proudly through the villagette, sparked a feeling in her chest she had never known before. She had nothing, no name, no place, no story. But maybe if she could wear that uniform, maybe the world would see more than her scars. The bus finally screeched to a stop. No one moved aside to let her in. She climbed the steps alone, sat at the back, far from the loud boys and girls. One girl took a photo of her and giggled. Another whispered, "That's the girl who got burned in the fire, right?" She looked out the window. She had heard worse. The wind pulled at her scarf. She held it tighter. This was nothing. Her real test hadn't started yet. When she reached the city center, the chaos swallowed her instantly. Horns, shouting, smoke, from food stalls, but her eyes were fixed on one building. The recruitment office stood tall, white paint peeling off, with 2 soldiers at the gate looking more bored than alert. She clutched her form, stepped forward. The guard raised an eyebrow. "You lost?" he asked. She shook her head. "Application." He looked her up and down slowly, then laughed. "You think the army wants—" He stopped when he noticed a superior officer stepping out behind her. "Let her through," the officer barked. She walked in. Her feet felt heavier with every step. Inside, other applicants sat waiting. Mostly confident girls, some chatting about workouts, others practicing their salutes. She stayed near the wall. Her scarf was still tight. No one greeted her. The clerk called out numbers. When her turn came, she stepped forward. The clerk looked at her scars. "This form is incomplete," he said. "You didn't attach medical proof of fitness." She nodded. "I passed the physical last week." He looked confused. "Which center?" She pulled out the small yellow slip from her back pocket. He looked at it. "This isn't enough. Come back next year." She didn't speak. She didn't plead. She simply stood there, eyes locked on the form. Something in her silence made the clerk shift uncomfortably. "Look," he said finally, "even if I send this up, they won't accept it. You don't look like you're ready." The way he said it, she knew he wasn't talking about her documents. "Can I sit for the written test?" she asked. "Rules are rules," he replied. "Come back next year. Or maybe don't. This place isn't made for people like you." She turned around, took the form with her, stepped outside. She didn't cry. She never cried in front of people. Not after that day. Not after the fire. But as she walked past the gate, someone tapped her shoulder. An old man in uniform. Cleaning staff. "You really want to be a soldier?" he asked. She nodded. He looked into her eyes. "Follow me." She hesitated, then followed. They entered a narrow alley, turned twice, climbed rusted stairs behind the building, and entered a dark room that smelled of oil and metal. He sat on a stool and pulled out a faded envelope. Inside was a visiting card. "Female Combat Wing. Disavowed list trainer. Major Shiren. She trains girls no one wants," he said. "You didn't hear this from me, but if you really want it, go to the address at midnight. Come alone." She stared at the card. The ink was smudged. The corner was burned. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was a trap. But she couldn't stop thinking about that soldier from last summer. She wanted to wear that uniform. She wanted to walk through the village and make every laughing mouth go silent. That night, her mother asked where she had been. "Library." She lied. Her mother nodded, didn't push. Her mother didn't ask many questions. Maybe because she didn't want to hear the answers. Maybe because the scars on her daughter's body were a reminder of her own guilt. When the fire happened, her mother had frozen. She had saved the house, not her daughter. At 11:30 p.m., she wrapped her scarf again and stepped out. The streets were quieter. Dogs howled in the distance. A few rickshaws waited near the corner. She walked 3 blocks, then 6, then finally reached the building mentioned on the card. It looked abandoned, broken windows, no lights, but the gate was open. She entered. Inside, candles flickered in an underground hall. Women were lined up. Some had missing fingers. Some had limps. One had an eye patch, but all of them stood straight, like soldiers. In front of them stood a tall woman with silver hair and a scar that ran across her cheek. "You're late," she said. Our girl stepped forward. "I was followed." The woman raised an eyebrow. "By who?" She turned out. The woman almost smiled. "Then you're in the right place." She threw a rope on the floor. Climb. It was a straight rope dangling from the ceiling, maybe 20 feet. She grabbed it, her fingers slipped. The scars made gripping hard. She tried again. This time she didn't stop. Her muscles screamed. Her arms bled. But she climbed. She didn't reach the top. But she didn't fall either. When she dropped down, the woman walked over. "What's your name?" she asked. Our girl paused. No one had asked that in years. "Amara?" The woman nodded. "From now on, you don't answer. 2 names. Only your work will speak." Then she turned to the group. "Remember this face. One day, the uniform will salute her." In that moment, Amara didn't feel like the burnt girl on the bench. She felt like fire itself, and far away, in a government office, a military officer received a silent alert. Unauthorized group detected. Leader, disavowed major, new recruit, civilian girl with prior burn trauma. He frowned. Another broken one trying to be a hero. He didn't know she wasn't trying. She was coming. The room smelled like rust, sweat, and old dreams. Amara stood in a line with 9 other girls, each broken, each angry, each with something to prove. The silver-haired woman, who had only introduced herself as ma'am, paced in front of them like a general in a battlefield. Her boots clicked with each step, slicing the silence with sharp authority. "You think pain makes you special?" she said. "You think trauma earns you respect?" Her voice was firm but not cruel. "This place doesn't care what happened to you, only what you do next." One girl flinched, another looked down. Amara kept her eyes ahead. She had spent years in silence, in shadows, in shame. She wasn't here for sympathy. She was here for change. The training hall was just cement and dust, but to Amara it felt like holy ground. Ma'am clapped her hands once. 5-kilometer run. Now, no warm-up, no instructions, just the command. The other girls scattered, some stumbling into each other, others already panting. Amara ran, her breath burned in her chest. Her legs stiff from years of underuse, but she kept going. She didn't care about pace. She cared about finishing. One by one, the girls dropped. Some collapsed, some faked cramps. Amara kept running. Her scarf loosened. Her burn marks glistened with sweat, but she didn't stop. When she crossed the last turn, her vision was blurry. The world felt like it was spinning, and just before her legs gave up, she touched the finish line. She didn't fall. She didn't smile. She just stood there gasping like an animal, staring at the horizon. Ma'am came over slowly. Name Amara didn't answer. I said, "What's your name?" "I don't have one," she whispered. Ma'am smirked. "Good answer." After the run, they weren't given water. They weren't allowed to sit. Ma'am believed in breaking bodies to test hearts. "You'll train like soldiers, not survivors," she said. "Survivors wait to be saved. Soldiers save others." One of the girls, a tall one with a limp, muttered under her breath, "We're not soldiers." Ma'am turned sharply. "What did you say?" The girl hesitated. "We're rejects. None of us made it through real channels." Ma'am walked right up to her. "That's what they want you to believe, that you're extras, mistakes. Let me tell you something. Every army needs warriors who've already tasted hell. You don't break. You're already broken. Now you rebuild." Amara felt something rise in her throat. Not tears, not pain, fire. For the first time in years, her hands weren't shaken, her knees weren't weak. She felt present. That night they were given mats to sleep on. No beds, no pillows. One girl cried softly in the corner. Another muttered prayers under her breath. Amara lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The sound of distant gunfire from a nearby training ground echoed in the dark. She wasn't afraid. She welcomed the noise. It was better than the silence of her own thoughts. In the morning, they were made to crawl through mud, climb over rusted vehicles, and hold their breath under freezing water tanks. Some vomited, some screamed. Ma'am said nothing. She only watched when Amara emerged from the water tank, shivering but calm. Ma'am handed her a towel. "Why do you want this?" she asked. Amara didn't lie. "I want to walk into my village one day. I want people to look at me and not feel sorry. I want to be the one who decides how they see me." Ma'am nodded once. "Then earn it." Days passed, then weeks. The girls trained harder than any standard camp. No medals, no inspections, no encouragement, only grit. Amara became faster, sharper. She learned to handle rifles, climb rope towers, administer first aid, and memorize terrain maps. One night during stealth training, Ma'am led them to a forest and said, "You have 6 hours to find your way back blindfolded. Fail, and you're out." Amara walked with bare feet through thorned paths, trusting sound and instinct. At one point, she fell into a small ditch, scraping her burned arm on the sharp stone. The pain flared like lightning, but she crawled out. Using her elbows, she reached the checkpoint with only 10 minutes left. Ma'am looked at her bleeding arm. "You didn't stop." Amara shook her head. "Pain is familiar, failure is not." Back in the capital, news of an illegal training facility began to spread. An officer named Lieutenant Tariq received a confidential photo taken from a drone of women training in a closed ground. "Who's funding this?" he asked. His superior shrugged. "Some rogue ex-commander used to be special forces. Now she's training misfits opticourt, not our priority." Tariq wasn't convinced. Send me the file on the girl with the scarf. I want to know her story. One evening, a new face arrived at camp. A man young, well-built, clearly military. He stood in front of the girls. Named Zane. I'm your obstacle and weapons specialist for the next 3 weeks. The girls looked confused. Ma'am never used outsiders. But Zane didn't care. He clapped. First test, hand-to-hand combat. You win, you get dinner. You lose, you go hungry. One by one, the girls stepped forward. Zane beat them all. Not cruelly, but efficiently. Then Amara stepped up. He looked at her scars and smiled. You sure, burn girl? The others went silent. She didn't reply. She just took position. He circled her fast, powerful. She stayed still. When he moved, she ducked. When he punched, she twisted. He caught her shoulder. Once spun her around, but she didn't fall. Then she moved quick as a whip hand kicked his knee hard. He staggered. She followed up with a knee to his side. He dropped. She stood over him. You don't win by strength, she whispered. You win by never freezing. Zane laughed. Not mockingly. Genuinely. Not bad, he said, rubbing his ribs. Not bad at all. That night, Ma'am called her privately. Why didn't you lose? She asked. Amara blinked. I don't understand. You could have taken the fall. You already earned respect, but you didn't. Why? Amara looked away. Because he laughed at my burn marks. Ma'am stared. At her he was testing your control. I passed, Amara said. Barely, Ma'am replied. Next time, don't fight because of anger. Fight because of reason. Meanwhile, in Tariq's office, a report landed on his desk. Name, Amara. Status, civilian survivor of house fire, age 7. No known family records. Refused therapy. Multiple attempts to join cadet programs, rejected for psychological instability. Last seen entering closed female unit under disavowed major shock. Tariq frowned. Tell me everything about her history. I want to know what burned her, and why she still glows. Back at camp, Ma'am gathered the girls. You've trained for 6 weeks. Tomorrow, we begin live simulations. Real weapons, real risk, no safety nets. One girl stepped back. We're not ready. Amara stepped forward. Then we fight scared. But we fight. That night they weren't given dinner. Hunger sharpened their minds. Fear gave them focus. Amara lay awake again, thinking not about her scars but about what would happen when the world found out they existed. The next morning, helicopters hovered above. The field was marked with orange flags. Simulated villages were created, filled with actors pretending to be enemies. The mission: rescue a hostage and bring them back without losing any team members. Ma'am gave no further details, just a timer, 1 hour. Amara led the unit, not officially, but the others followed her eyes, her voice, her calm. They moved through the trees like wind. When gunfire echoed, they hit the ground. Amara signaled to 2 flank left. She moved right. They spotted the hostage tied in a hut, guarded by 2 fake soldiers. Amara crept up silently, cut the ropes, and motioned for backup. On their way out, one of the girls tripped and screamed. The enemy spotted them. Shots fired. Amara grabbed her, dragged her behind a tree, covered her mouth until she stopped panicking. Then they ran. 59 minutes. They crossed the finish line. Ma'am looked impressed. No deaths, no panic. Mission success. Then she turned to Amara. You're ready. But someone else had been watching too. Tariq stood in a surveillance van nearby, arms crossed. She's good, he muttered. Too good. His superior asked, should we shut it down? Tariq stared at Amara's face on the screen. Not yet. Let's see how far the fire spreads before we try to put it out. ChatGPT said. Zarya didn't flinch when they pointed. She had learned long ago that when people couldn't understand your scars, they tried to make you feel ashamed of them. But this was the first time she'd faced it in a combat simulation. The room smelled of dust, sweat, and metal. Cadets were running drills, dropping and rising in synchronized lines. But all eyes kept darting back to her. The girl with the burn marks, the one who wore long sleeves in summer, the one whose face had patches of skin that told a story without her needing to say a word. Today was a day of pair drills, and as luck or cruelty would have it, Zarya was paired with Dax. He was tall, arrogant, and always surrounded by laughter, not because he was funny, but because he was feared. Dax didn't mock people to entertain, he did it to control. And when the sergeant barked to Zarya and Dax forward, there was a low ripple of snickering in the line. Zarya took her position. On the mat, Dax grinned as if this was a game. Ready? Scorch, he whispered loud enough for others to hear. She didn't respond. Don't melt on me now, he continued with a smirk, circling her slowly. Wouldn't want your face to rub off on my uniform? Zarya's breath stayed even. She had learned to take deeper wounds in silence. But inside, something snapped. She wasn't going to walk away today. Not again. Begin, the drill officer shouted. Dax lunged first, arrogant, overconfident. Zarya sidestepped, grabbed his arm, and brought him to the ground with a move so fast the officer stood up. The mat slapped hard as Dax hit the floor. He scrambled up, eyes wide with embarrassment. Laughter echoed from the sidelines, but not for him. For the first time they weren't laughing at Zarya, they were stunned by her. He charged again, this time with more force. Zarya ducked, twisted his leg, and had him pinned in seconds. Dax shouted, "She's cheating," but the officer was already walking toward them, face unreadable. "Where did you learn that reversal?" he asked Zarya. She hesitated. "Sir, my grandfather taught me. He was in the 54th Battalion." Before he passed, the officer nodded slowly. "Show me again." As Zarya demonstrated the movement, the other cadets started whispering. Not insults this time, but questions, curiosity, maybe even respect. After the session, Dax limped off without a word. His laughter had vanished. But Zarya knew better than to think it was over. Boys like him didn't forget being humbled by a girl, especially not one who didn't look perfect. Later that night, in the bunk hall, Dax sat with his group, face red from more than just embarrassment. "You guys are really gonna act like she's someone now. That burn victim. She smoked you, man," one cadet said, chuckling. Dax slammed his fist into the table. "It was luck. She's a freak. You'll see." Zarya lay in her top bunk, earphones in, pretending not to hear. But she caught every word. She didn't cry, not anymore. Every insult only fueled the fire inside her. The same fire that once tried to end her life, now gave her purpose. She remembered the night of the accident, the flames licking the ceiling, her little brother's cries, the way she threw herself over him as the gas tank exploded. The doctors said she'd never walk again, that her face would never look the same. But she did walk, and she chose to join the army, not to prove anyone wrong, but to prove to herself she was still whole. The next morning, a surprise announcement rattled through the base speakers. "Cadet Zarya M. to the general's office. Report immediately." Murmurs followed. "The general, what did she do?" Zarya marched toward the towering building, heart pounding. She knocked. A deep voice replied, "Enter." Inside, General Hammond sat behind a desk of medals, files, and worn leather. "You're the one with the grandfather in the 54th. "Yes, sir." He slid a folder across the desk. "This is your evaluation. You're ahead in tactical strategy and combat technique. Do you know why?" Zarya hesitated. "I trained hard, sir." He nodded. "You're also one of the only cadets who's already been through a battlefield of another kind." Zarya looked up, unsure. "I read your file. I know what you've survived. Most recruits break under drill pressure. You didn't even blink when that boy mocked you. You used it. That's soldier material." Zarya's voice was steady. "Thank you, sir." The general stood, then walked to a locker behind him. He opened it, pulled something out, and handed it to her. It was a patch, not a medal, not an award. A simple patch with the emblem of the 54th Battalion, her grandfather's old unit. "Your grandfather was a hero," the general said. "He saved my life during Operation Crimson Rain. I owe him everything." Zarya's eyes widened. "You knew him?" The general smiled. "More than knew, he trained me." He stepped back, saluted her, and said, "Welcome to the legacy, Cadet Zarya." Zarya couldn't breathe. She saluted back, unsure if her hand was trembling from shock or pride. Outside the building, a few cadets were waiting, Dax among them. "What was that about?" he asked, clearly trying to sound unimpressed. Zarya didn't answer. She didn't need to. One of the drill officers approached, reading from a clipboard. "Cadet Zarya has been selected for advanced leadership training, effective immediately." Dax's jaw dropped. "Are you kidding me?" "She outranked you, son," the officer said plainly. "Get used to it." Zarya walked past him, calm and steady, but inside, a storm of emotions swirled: grief, gratitude, and a fire that refused to die. She had just taken her first real step toward something bigger than revenge or recognition, and she knew Dax wasn't done yet. But neither was she, not even close. ChatGPT said. Zarya stood at the edge of the outdoor training field, the wind brushing her face as the weight of her new uniform settled on her shoulders. The patch of the 54th Battalion now rested proudly on her right arm, its fabric worn and strong just like her spirit. But with the honor came a pressure that pierced deeper than any insult ever could. The other cadets watched her differently now, not with ridicule, but with something more dangerous: expectations. Even the ones who once laughed at her now fell silent in her presence, unsure whether to respect her, envy her, or fear what she might become. She didn't ask for the spotlight, but it followed her like a shadow. The day's task was a survival. Drill and endurance run across mud, broken terrain, barbed wires, and simulated threats. Zarya wasn't just expected to compete, she was expected to lead. Her name had been called first, and the squad assigned to her had mixed reactions. Some, like Ava and Jones, looked at her with quiet support. Others, like Reese and Dax especially, Dax store smirks that barely masked resentment. "I hope you don't trip and burn yourself again," Dax whispered as they lined up at the start. Zarya looked forward, unshaken. The whistle blew. She surged forward, her muscles remembering every early morning run. Every scarred night she jogged through pain and doubt. The squad struggled to keep up, and as the terrain worsened, Dax began lagging. He muttered curses, clearly frustrated. That Zarya never slowed. She leaped over trenches, waded through waist-deep water, and climbed walls with a silent rage that came from years of being dismissed. Halfway through the course, they reached a narrow ravine with a slick metal pipe acting as a bridge. Zarya crossed first, knees bent, balance steady. Behind her, Ava slipped halfway and nearly fell. Without thinking, Zarya turned and grabbed her hand, steadying her until she made it across. But in doing so, she didn't see Dax reaching the pipe. His foot slipped. He fell into the shallow ravine below with a sickening thud. Zarya heard the cry. She paused. The rest of the team stopped too. Reese shouted, "Leave him. He's injured. We have to move." Zarya stared down at Dax, who was groaning, holding his ankle. His eyes met hers filled with pain, and something else he had never shown before, vulnerability. She didn't hesitate. Sliding down the side of the ravine, she reached him, pulled his arm over her shoulder, and started hauling him up. He resisted. Weakly, "Don't touch me," he grunted. "Shut up and hold on," she snapped. Together, they made it back to the top, her body screaming from the effort. The rest of the squad gawked in disbelief. Zarya didn't stop to explain. She pointed forward. "Let's finish this." They crossed the last leg as a unit. Dirty, exhausted, changed at the finish line. The commanding officer raised an eyebrow. "Helping a fallen cadet cost you time, Zarya." "I'd rather lose a clock than a teammate," she replied calmly. He said nothing, only noted something on his pad. Later that evening, in the mess hall, the mood was strange. Some cadets nodded respectfully at her, others still avoided eye contact. Dax limped in on crutches, his face unreadable. He spotted Zarya sitting alone, and for a moment, looked like he might approach. But instead, he turned and left. Zarya exhaled. She wasn't hoping for a thank you. That wasn't why she did it. But part of her had wondered, maybe, just maybe. That night, as she folded her bedding, a letter was slipped under her door. Name, just 3 words scrawled on it. "You earned it." She held the note for a long time, wondering who had sent it. Ava, the officer. Even Dax. Before she could think further, the base alarm blared. Cadets jumped from beds. Boots hit the ground, and orders rang out like gunfire. Zarya raced outside into the freezing night, heart thudding. A drill officer's voice crackled through the megaphone. "This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test." All squads were assembled in tight lines. The general's jeep pulled up, headlights cutting through the dust. He stepped out, face grim. "There's been a breach. Local insurgents attempted to access a munitions depot 20 kilometers from here. We're deploying a unit tonight. Volunteers only. It's risky." No one spoke. Then Zarya stepped forward. "I'll go." The general's eyes narrowed. Impressed. Then others followed. Ava Jones, even Reese. The last to step forward, limping but defiant, was Dax. "I'm in too," he muttered, not meeting Zarya's eyes. The general looked over them all. "Get geared, wheels up in 20%. As they dispersed, Zarya's heart pounded not just from fear but anticipation. This wasn't training anymore. This was real, and she was ready. But what none of them knew, what even the general hadn't shared, was that the insurgents had a name on their hit list. And that name was hers. The chopper blades sliced through the heavy silence of the night sky as the transport flew over rugged terrain. Inside, Zarya sat across from Dax, her eyes steady, focused. The rest of the squad sat in tense silence, their weapons strapped tight, adrenaline pulsing beneath their skin. This was no training drill. This was war, all unpredictable and real. Dax had barely said a word since volunteering. He kept shifting his injured ankle uncomfortably, but his expression never revealed pain. Zarya noticed. She noticed everything now. Leadership didn't come with a badge or permission, it came with watching, listening, and stepping in when others looked away. The general's voice had echoed in her mind. Since the debrief, target was an underground cache near the northern village. We suspect local fighters were tipped off. Your mission is recon, recovery, and if necessary, resistance. As the chopper began its descent, dust rose in violent circles. Zarya braced herself as boots hit the ground. The team fanned out, rifles, raised eyes alert. Night vision goggles turned the world a haunting green. But even through the haze, Zarya could feel the danger humming. The village was quiet too quiet. Burned-out huts lined the perimeter. Smoke still curled from one of the homes. Ava whispered, "This doesn't feel right." Zarya signaled them to split into pairs. She and Dax moved toward the main road while Ava and Reese took the east. The plan was simple: sweep, clear, and regroup. But nothing about this mission was going to stay simple. Halfway down the road, a sudden flicker of movement in the corner of Zarya's vision made her freeze. A child, maybe 6 years old, stood, barefoot behind a broken fence, clutching something wrapped in a cloth. Zarya approached slowly. "Hey, it's okay," she whispered, lowering her weapon. The child took a step back. Zarya stopped. "I'm not going to hurt you." But when the child turned, Zarya saw it taped wires, an explosive vest. Her heart dropped into her stomach. "Dax," she started, but it was too late. A sharp crack split the air. Dax had spotted the same thing and fired a single, precise shot. The child dropped instantly. Zarya's scream died in her throat, but the explosion never came. She rushed forward and knelt, checking. The vest wasn't real. A decoy? The rooftops came the rain of gunfire. Zarya dove behind the fence, dragging the child's body with her. "Ambush!" she yelled into the comms. Snipers, rooftops, southeast. Dax was already returning fire, but his injured ankle slowed him. Zarya didn't think. She darted into the open, pulled him back by his gear strap, and rolled them both into cover. Reese's voice crackled in her earpiece. We're pinned. Multiple targets. Heavy fire. Zarya, where are you? In the square? She snapped. Fall back to the temple ruins. Regroup there. Bullets tore through the walls around them. Dust filled their lungs. Zarya peeked out, eyes scanning. She saw the muzzle flash. Third rooftop, left side. She aimed and fired. The flash disappeared. She looked at Dax. His arm was bleeding now, but his jaw clenched. Why'd you pull me back? She stared at him, disbelief washing over her. Because I'm not leaving anyone behind, not even you. He blinked, something changing behind his eyes. The fire slowed. Voices called out in the distance in a dialect Zarya didn't understand. A shadow moved across the street. Zarya aimed and froze. The figure wasn't armed. It was a woman, older, walking toward them slowly, hands raised. She spoke gently, urgently. Zarya couldn't understand, but the tone was maternal, pleading. Then the woman pointed, directly at Zarya. Behind her, more villagers appeared, mostly women and elders. None carried weapons. All stared at Zarya. Ava's voice crackled. Zarya, we made it to the temple. Where are you? Zarya rose slowly from cover, hands raised too. Hold your fire. I think they know me. Dax stared at her. What the hell is going on? Before she could answer, the older woman stepped closer. Her weathered hands gently touched Zarya's face, then traced the burn marks on her neck. Then, in broken English, she said one word, Raylani. Zarya blinked. What? The woman repeated it. Raylani? It was your name. Before. The squad regrouped at the temple ruins, weapons lowered but still ready. Zarya couldn't stop trembling. The villagers had helped them, shown them hidden tunnels to escape enemy lines. But no one answered the question, echoing inside her. Who was Raylani? Ava looked at her in the darkness. Zarya, what does that mean? She didn't respond. That night, while the squad slept in shifts, Zarya sat alone, the old woman's voice replaying in her ears. She dug into her pocket and pulled out the only thing she had from her earliest memories. Locket. Inside. For the first time, she noticed a name engraved, faintly beneath the grime. Rail, A-N-I. The locket slipped from her fingers as her pulse raced. All these years, she thought the burns were the only marks her past had left. But her name, her real name, might be the key to a story no one ever told her, and someone didn't want her to remember. Just before dawn, a message came through encrypted. Comes. Raylani unit reactivated. Operative confirmed alive. Await orders. Zarya's blood ran cold. They hadn't just come here for the depot, they had come for her. The fire crackled in the distance, the scent of burnt rubber and diesel mixing with the dry night air. Zarya sat hunched behind the ancient stone wall of the temple ruins, her heart thudding against her ribs like a war drum. Her hands trembled, slightly, but not from fear, from memory. The word Raylani spun in her mind like a tornado. That woman from the village, how had she known that name? And what did it mean that the encrypted message called her an operative? An operative of what? She clenched the locket tightly in her palm until the sharp edge dug into her skin. She looked across the darkened chamber where her squad lay scattered, in uneasy rest. Ava snored softly, her arm slung across her rifle. Reese cleaned his blade with ritual precision. Dax leaned against the pillar, watching her quietly. He hadn't said much since they escaped the ambush, but his eyes no longer held mockery, they held questions. Zarya stood and walked outside, needing air, needing silence. But Dax followed her. You haven't said a word about what she called you, he said. I'm not sure I want to, she muttered. That wasn't just some villager, he said. She knew you. Zarya turned sharply. I don't even know me. Dax raised his brows. Then maybe it's time you find out. She stared out at the hills, her eyes scanning the horizon. In the distance, a column of smoke curled into the sky. When I was a kid, she whispered, there was a fire. I was 5. They said my family died. That I was found alone, hiding in the crawlspace of a church, burned, silent. No one came for me, so the system gave me a name. Zarya, that's all I've had since. Dax's voice softened. But you think? You weren't born, Zarya. I don't think, she said. I know. Silence stretched between them like a loaded wire. Then Dax said, that encrypted message, it didn't come from command. I checked, it came from a shadow network. One I've only heard rumors about. Zarya's gaze snapped to him. You've seen it before. Once. Years ago, we were briefed before a classified rescue mission. One of the officers mentioned a program called Phoenix Ember. Kids taken from war zones, reconditioned, some trained, some erased. Zarya's stomach turned. Erased memories. New lives. Burned scars weren't accidents. They were camouflaged. She stepped back, breath caught in her throat. You're telling me I'm one of them. I'm telling you, we need answers. Reese and Ava joined them outside, confusion etched on their faces. We're moving again, Ava asked. Zarya shook her head. No, but we need to get to the northern border town. There's a former intelligence safehouse there. My gut says they'll have files. Or someone who knows what Phoenix Ember is. Reese looked doubtful. What if it's a trap? Zarya looked at them all. Then I walk in alone. No, Dax said before she could finish. Where you go, we go. For the first time in days, Zarya felt a small ember of something she hadn't known in years: trust. The team moved at night, dodging patrols, hiking over rocky cliffs, and crossing a shallow river. Zarya led with new fire in her step, her instincts razor-sharp, like they were waking up from a long sleep. At one point, they encountered a checkpoint. Zarya didn't flinch. She used hand signals she didn't remember learning. She spoke a dialect that rolled off her tongue effortlessly. The guards let them pass. Hours later, they reached the outskirts of the border town. It was bigger than the others, busy with traders, soldiers, and watchers from every side. Zarya led them through narrow alleys to a bookstore battered and dusty, but still standing. Inside, they found a staircase leading to a basement. Locked. Dax looked at her. You want to do the honors? Zarya stepped forward, pulled a small blade from her boot, and jammed it under the keypad. She twisted. Sparks flew. The door clicked open. Okay, that's not in any military training, I know, Reese said, wide-eyed. Zarya stepped inside. The basement was lined with metal cabinets and decaying paper files. A few old computers blinked under a layer of dust. Ava brushed off a folder. It's all in code. Zarya's fingers hovered over one file. Her eyes scanned the markings. Then she opened it. Inside was a child's photo. Burn marks on her cheek. A blurry name tag. Raylani, Unit 27. Zarya felt her knees give way as she dropped to the floor. The file listed dates, ages, missions, test scores, behavioral reset, her entire life manufactured. They took me, she whispered. They made me. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the shadows. We didn't make you, we unlocked you. The squad spun, guns raised. A tall man in black stepped from a dark corridor. His face was lined with age, but his stance was military. Who are you? Dax barked. I was her handler. Long before you were ever enlisted. Zarya stood, face pale. Why are you following me? The man raised a small metal badge. Because Phoenix Ember never really ended. You were our best operative. Until the fire. Zarya shook her head. I wasn't your operative. I was a child. And now you're a weapon, whether you accept it or not. Ava pushed between them. Back off. Or I swear. The man held up his hand. We have orders. There's a general who's looking for her, he said. He remembers Raylani. He wants to meet you. Zarya narrowed her eyes. Who is he? The man smiled faintly. The one who started all of this. He handed her a small. Dr. Coordinators are on this. Come alone. He stepped back into the shadows and vanished through a hidden exit. Reese looked at her. You're not actually thinking of going? Zarya stared down at the drive. I have to. Dax shook his head. Then we're going with you. She looked at them, her voice firm. If this is about me, I can't let anyone else get hurt. He asked for Raylani, not Zarya, so maybe it's time I meet him. Azur. Reese opened his mouth to argue, but then, from the alley outside, gunfire exploded. Glass shattered. Smoke filled the shop. We've been followed, Ava yelled. Zarya tucked the drive into her vest and raised her weapon. Let's move. No one dies today. The squad fought their way out, covering each other, darting through alleys, as shadows closed in. By the time they reached the western wall of the town, 3 of their pursuers were down, but more were coming. Stood at the top of the ridge, catching her breath, heart pounding. In the distance, across the border hills, was the meeting point. A secret base buried in the desert. The general waited. And Zarya Raylani was finally going to ask him why. He burned her life to the ground, and why, after all these years, he still remembered her name. The desert heat hit them like a slap as they crossed the border at dawn. Zarya Raylani walked slightly ahead of the team, her boots sinking into the sand, her face calm but burning on the inside. Every mile closer to the coordinates made her heart beat faster. She didn't know what scared her more, what she'd find at the end, or what might awaken inside her when she faced it. Dax, Ava, and Reese followed her in silence, each weighed down by what they'd seen in the files. The voice, the truth, none of them had expected. The girl they'd mocked, pitied, and doubted was something far more dangerous than any of them could grasp. But none of them left. Not after what she'd been through. Not after what she was walking toward. Reese finally broke the silence. You don't have to do this alone. General or not, this man destroyed your life. Zarya kept walking, her voice low. He didn't destroy it. He rewrote it. Dax frowned. And now he wants to meet you like it's some family reunion. That's twisted. He called me by a name I forgot, she said. That means he remembers more than I do. That means he's part of the fire. They camped behind a broken ridge before sundown. Zarya studied the drive in her hands. Its small silver frame was cold against her skin, but what it carried inside felt hotter than flame. Ava opened a can of beans, sat next to her, and quietly handed her a spoon. So, Ava said, voice unusually soft. Raylani, huh? Zarya gave a small smile. Weird, right? We all wear names like armor, Ava replied. Some of us just forget what's underneath. Zarya didn't eat much. Her mind kept drifting back to the man in the safe house, to the way he said, our best operative. The phrase clung to her like a leech. What kind of childhood had she really had? Who had trained her? Why did she still dream of flames and men in masks whispering code in her ear? The night was still when they reached the location marked on the driven abandoned airstrip in the middle of nowhere. The sand was smoother here, wind-blown and clean, as if trying to erase whatever sins had once happened on this land. In the center of the cracked runway sat a single rusting hangar. Its doors were slightly open, just enough for a person to walk in without ducking. Zarya turned to her team. "This is where I go in alone." Dax immediately shook his head. "No, Chance, you promised," she said gently. "You all did. If I walk into something bigger than me, I need you out here to pull me back out." Ava put a hand on her shoulder. "You scream, we storm it." Zarya nodded once, then walked forward. The hangar swallowed her in silence. The air inside was cool, unnaturally so. She expected darkness, maybe shadows, but what she found was worse. It was clean, sterile, a war room, hidden under rust, and sitting in a chair in the center, as calm as if he were waiting for tea, was a man in full military uniform. He stood as she approached. Old, white-haired, broad-shouldered. His medals gleamed. Against his chest, he didn't look at her like a stranger. He looked at her like a disappointed parent. "Raylani," he said with a slow nod. Zarya didn't flinch. "You know me. I built you," he replied. "I never forgot." She stepped closer, fists clenched. "Then you know what you took." "I saved you," he said. "You were 5, covered in burns. The rebels had slaughtered your parents, and left you to die in a pile of bodies. We found you. You didn't speak for months. You could have given me a home. You gave me commands. You had a gift," he said. "You could memorize patterns, learn languages, fight better than soldiers twice your age. We trained you to survive, and you did." Zarya's voice trembled. "You trained a child to kill." "I trained a child to live," he corrected. "You were broken. We made you useful." She wanted to scream, to punch, to cry, but she held steady. "Why now?" "Because you started remembering, and I started wondering. What happens when the most dangerous operative I ever raised wakes up and doesn't remember who controls her?" Zarya's eyes narrowed. "I don't belong to anyone. That's what scares me." He walked over to a small table and picked up a photo. He handed it to her. A girl no older than 10. Scars on her face, a medal pinned on her shirt. "You saved my life once," he said, "in the northern province. A child sniper was about to take me out. You spotted the glint from a tower window and dragged me down before the shot rang out. You were 9. You didn't speak a word. Just nodded and disappeared. That day, I knew you weren't normal." Zarya's eyes filled with tears she didn't let fall. "I was a child. You were extraordinary." She looked at the photo. "You called me your weapon, but now you say I'm a threat." He stepped closer. "Because you're remembering what we buried. There's a part of you we locked away. Not because we feared you'd be weak, but because we feared what would happen if you were whole." Zarya looked up at him, trembling. "What did you hide from me?" He hesitated. "A code. One that was encrypted into your neural patterns. A protocol. You weren't just a soldier. You were a failsafe." Her blood ran cold. "Failsafe for what?" He turned to the far wall, pressed a button, and a section opened to reveal a vault. Inside were machines' old computers, data units, and one large screen. He turned it on. A map flickered to life. Red zones pulsed across it. He looked at her grimly. Phoenix Ember wasn't a program, it was a countermeasure. If any region lost control, we'd activate the Ember protocol. Send in the failsafe operative Raylani to eliminate the command chain. Zarya stared in horror. "You made me a doomsday weapon." "You volunteered," he said. "I was a child," she shouted. "You were never a child," he replied softly. The room spun. Zarya backed away. Her life hadn't just been stolen, it had been designed, built for destruction. She turned. "I'm leaving. You'll never control me again." He didn't stop her, but as she reached the doors, he said, "You can't run from what's inside you. If the Ember protocol activates again, your mind will trigger. You won't even know you're being used." She froze. "Then, how do I stop it?" He said nothing. Zarya left the hangar and walked fast. The second the air hit her face, she dropped to her knees. Dax was already sprinting to her. "What happened?" "I know who I am," she whispered, "and it terrifies me." Reese and Ava helped her up. "You look like you saw a ghost," Reese said. Zarya stared into the desert. "Worse. I saw what I'm capable of." They turned to leave, but behind them, the ground shook. A low boom filled the air. They turned. The hangar exploded in a fireball, flames bursting into the sky. Metal rained down. Smoke curled upward like a demon's breath. Dax pulled her down. "What the hell?" Zarya covered her mouth. He knew what. He wasn't afraid of me remembering. He was afraid someone else would activate me. Ava looked panicked, so he erased himself. Reese turned to Zarya. "What now?" She clenched her fists. "We find the one who started the Ember protocol, because if they turn it on again, I won't be able to stop myself." And somewhere far away, in a cold control room, a voice whispered, "Raylani is awakening." The dust from the explosion hadn't settled when they were already moving. Zarya's legs felt heavy, not from fatigue, but from the weight of what she now knew. She wasn't just a girl with burned scars. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a weaponer programmed mind wrapped in a human soul, and someone out there still had the switch. Dax drove like a man possessed. tires carving deep into the dirt roads as the sky turned from smoke ray to blue. Reese sat in the back with the rifle across his lap, eyes scanning the horizon. Ava held Zarya's hand without saying a word. Words didn't work anymore. They'd all seen too much. When they finally stopped, it was near a dried-up riverbed, where the satellite signal still reached. Ava booted up the decrypted drive they had stolen from the hangar's remaining Volta backup data unit the general had forgotten, or maybe left for her. Zarya stared at the screen like it was a doorway. Lines of code danced, then a voice played hers, younger, robotic. Protocol 7 accepted. Raylani, active Ember Zone, South Sector targets. 11, completion confirmed. Emotional override, 3%. Reese looked away. That was you. Zarya didn't answer. Ava zoomed in on the data tag. This file is 17 years old. You were 9, Dax whispered. She was a kid, and they had her killing people like a machine. Zarya's face was stone. They didn't make me human. They made me forget I ever was. But then Ava's eyes widened. She pointed to the bottom of the screen. Look at this command chain access. OFF, override authorization, unknown. Reese leaned in. So it wasn't the general. Someone else triggered her. Zarya's heart stopped. And someone else still can. They fell silent, staring at the tiny blinking cursor on the screen, pulsing like a heartbeat. The override could be anywhere, anyone. They weren't chasing ghosts, they were running from one. Dax shut the laptop. We need a lead, a name, something. Ava sighed. There's one other data tag I haven't opened. It's marked with a black key code. Untraceable. Might be a trap. Zarya nodded. Open it. The screen flickered. A video played. Static first, then the blurry image of a man's face. Older, mixed race, deep scar on his left cheek. Voice deep and calm. If you're watching this, it means the general is dead good. He was never going to admit what we did. My name is Commander Idris Kale. You probably don't remember me, Raylani, but I was the one who taught you to speak again. I taught you silence wasn't survival. I tried to save you when they turned you into protocol. Zarya's breath caught. I remember that name. On-screen Idris leaned in. I failed you. But there's still a way to end this. The override code isn't just digital, it's biological, it's in your blood. They designed it that way in case you were ever captured. Only someone with matching genetic markers could activate or disable the That means one thing. He paused. The team leaned in closer. Idris whispered, your brother is still alive. Zarya's world collapsed. Reese cursed under his breath. Dax sat frozen. Ava just stared. You have a brother. I didn't think I had a family, Zarya whispered. Idris continued. We separated you during the fire evacuation. You were taken by command. He was smuggled out by a rebel nurse. I don't know where he is now, but someone's been using him or his blood to run the system. Zarya's voice trembled. Where do I find him? The screen glitched. Idris looked down, then back. The last trace I had was from a facility called G4 Sierra in the Eastern Ridge. It was off books, unfunded, meant for decommissioned ops. You'll find more than your brother there. You'll find the ghosts of everything we did. The video ended. The cursor blinked. Nobody moved. Ava was the first to speak. We go east. Zarya looked out at the horizon. We go now. The journey to the ridge was long, rocky, barely passable. They drove through abandoned zones, crossed decaying checkpoints, saw bullet-pocked signs in 3 languages. Zarya didn't sleep. Her hands trembled often, not from fear but from rage. She'd been lied to, programmed, scarred, and now she had a brother out there, one who might have been used like a tool the way she had, or, worse, might have helped activate her. The G4 Sierra facility sat inside a cliff basin, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. It was carved into rock, its entrance buried beneath years of dust and camouflage. They entered quietly, weapons ready. The air was stale. The lights still worked. Inside were rooms filled with empty beds, locked cabinets, and scratched mirrors. And then deep in the heart of the facility, they found the files. Rows of them. Names, numbers, histories. Children like her. Some marked failed, others erased. But one file had a different stamp, protected. Ava opened it. The photo inside showed a boy 10 years old, dark skin, green eyes. Same eyes as Zarya. Dax read the name aloud. Cairo. Zarya touched the paper, my brother. But then they heard it. Footsteps, soft, deliberate. Coming from the hallway, Reese raised his rifle. We're not alone. From the shadows emerged a man, mid-20s, strong-build. Calm face. He held no weapon. He raised his hand slowly. You're looking for me? He said. Zarya stepped forward, heart hammering. Cairo. He nodded. I've been waiting for you. Tears burned her eyes. All this time, you shouldn't have come. He interrupted. Everyone froze. Zarya blinked. What? You brought them to the door, Cairo said quietly. Now they'll come. Dax moved forward. Who's coming? Cairo's voice was heavy. The ones who used us both. The ones who still need her. Zarya felt dizzy. Did you help activate the Ember protocol? He looked down, not by choice. They took my blood years ago. But when the system pinged for a match again, I knew they'd found you. Ava whispered. So they're watching. Cairo nodded. Always. Suddenly, alarms blared, red lights flashed. Across the hallway, Zarya looked around. They found us. Cairo reached behind a cabinet and pulled out a small black case. Inside, this is the override nullifier. It has to be injected into your spine. It's the only way to sever the link between your brain and the Ember command chain. Zarya stared. Why didn't you use it before? Because it kills the protocol, he said. But it might kill you too. The sound of boots echoed closer. Dax shouted, we're out of time. Zarya reached for the case. Her hands trembled. If I don't do this, they'll keep using me. They'll make me hurt people. Cairo's voice broke. You're my sister. I won't lose you again. You already did, she said. Now help me end this. He opened the case, revealing the needle. The door behind them exploded open. Smoke and shouting filled the room. Soldiers poured in, dressed in black masks. Shots rang out. Reese and Dax fired back. Ava dragged a table over for cover. Zarya turned, locked eyes with Cairo. Now he stabbed the needle into her back. She gasped, then screamed. Her body convulsed. The world spun. Her vision flickered. Kairo held her. Hold on, Raylani. Fight. It inside her mind. Doors were closing. Voices screaming. Commands trying to activate, but the code was breaking. The system inside her brain was burning down. Her memories real and false fused. She remembered the fire, the men, the darkness. But she also remembered laughter. A warm hand. Her brother's voice whispering, I'll find you. And then, silence. Zarya's body went limp. Kairo caught her. Stay with me. The soldiers fell back as Ava lobbed a flash grenade. Dax dragged them toward the rear exit. Reese covered them. Outside. They ran, into the smoke, into the dark, into the unknown. Zarya stirred in Cairo's arms. Her eyes fluttered open. He smiled, weeping. You're back, she whispered. I remember everything. Behind them, the facility began to collapse. And far away, in a command bunker buried deep beneath a mountain, a single terminal blinked red. A woman in a white coat frowned. Override terminated, she said. A man behind her asked, what now? She smiled coldly. Now we test the other one. Under the silent cover of night, the team rode in a military transport truck, dust rising behind them like ghosts chasing their tires. Zarya sat near the back, her fingers gripping the edge of her seat, her mind replaying the general's words. The mission was real. The danger was real. But what unsettled her wasn't the enemy, was the whisper she had caught from the intelligence officer just before boarding. She's the one thereafter. She hadn't been named aloud, but Zarya knew. And the fire inside her, the same fire that carried her through pain and scars and isolation, now burned colder. This wasn't about proving herself anymore. This was survival. They arrived at the outpost near the munitions depot just before dawn. A smoky haze hovered in the valley, and the rising sun painted the hills blood orange. The squad split into two, one to secure the perimeter, the other to search the depot for signs of sabotage or hidden devices. Zarya was assigned to the recon team, along with Ava, Dax, and Reese. Inside the depot, it smelled of iron and dust. Stacks of ammo crates and fuel drums created a maze of steel and danger. They moved in silence, eyes scanning, weapons drawn. Anything, Ava whispered. Clear so far, Reese replied, motioning to the back corridor. Zarya moved ahead of them, her footsteps light, deliberate. Her instincts screamed something was off. There were no signs of forced entry, but the energy was wrong. To clean. Then she saw it, a faint shimmer, nearly invisible wire stretched between two crates. Her breath caught. She held out her hand to stop Ava from taking another step. Slowly, she knelt and traced the wire to a small black device tucked under a fuel drum. Tripwire, and that's a homemade det. A gunshot rang out. Then another. Reese ducked. Dax swore. Ava screamed Zarya's name. They scrambled for cover. Outside, shouting erupted. Enemy fire from the hills. The depot wasn't just booby, it was bait. Zarya's hands worked fast, eyes locked on the bomb. I can disable it, but I need time. Dax hesitated. Then he threw his body in front of her, shielding her from the corridor. Work, we'll cover. Reese and Ava exchanged stunned glances before taking defensive positions. Zarya's fingers moved with terrifying precision. Every twist of a wire, every breath she held, took her deeper into memories she wished she could bury. Memories of fire, screams, and a burn that changed her forever. But this time, she wasn't a victim. She was the solution. The final circuit detached. The device whined, then went silent. She exhaled. We're clear. Dax shouted toward the hallway. Fall back. Fall back now. They ran. Bullets zipped past. Ava fired back. Reese helped cover Zarya as they sprinted out the depot. Outside, chaos raged. Smoke grenades bloomed. One of the transport trucks exploded. The other squad was pinned down near the hills. The general barked commands over radio, but the signal was breaking. Suddenly, Zarya heard her name, but not from her teammates, from the enemy. A voice on a loudspeaker echoed from the trees. Zarya Khan, we know who you are. We know what you did. Come out and no one else dies. The team froze. How the hell do they know her name? Ava gasped. Zarya's chest rose and fell. Her heart pounded. Her past? The thing she'd tried so hard to bury beneath sweat, silence, and obedience, had clawed its way back. I don't know how they know, she said, but I'm not letting anyone else get hurt because of me. She stepped forward. Dax grabbed her arm. You walk out there alone? They'll kill you. Or worse, Reese muttered. Use you? Zarya stared at the tree line. The voice crackled again. You've always belonged to fire, Zarya. We just want to bring you home. Those words chilled her more than any bullet. They know about the fire, she whispered. What fire? Ava asked. But Zarya didn't answer. A blast shook the ground nearby. The depot trembled. One of the walls collapsed. A cadet from the other squad lay on the ground, wounded. Zarya turned. We need to get everyone out now. There's no extraction. Both trucks are gone, Reese said. Dax stepped forward. There is one way. We take the ridge trail. It's by rough, but it'll lead us to the river end evac point Bravo. Ava frowned. We'll be exposed. No cover. Better than sitting here waiting to be picked off, Zarya said. The team moved fast, carrying the wounded, covering one another. Smoke filled the air. The enemy didn't fire. They were watching, waiting. Their voice returned one last time. Run, Zarya. But remember, burns never fade. As they reached the ridge, Zarya looked back once, flames flickering behind her. She thought of the scars on her back, the ones she had hidden, the ones that once shamed her. Now, they reminded her of survival. They climbed the narrow trail, feet bleeding, lungs burning. At the top, the river came into view, and beyond it the extraction team. But as they rushed downhill, a figure stepped out from the trees. Not insurgent, not soldier, someone from Zarias. Past, someone long believed dead. He smiled. Zarya froze in place, her boots skidding slightly on the rocky descent. The others behind her halted too, sensing the shift in her energy before even seeing the man in front of them. The figure stood tall, clean-shaven, dressed in civilian clothes, but holding himself like a soldier. His face was sun-worn, eyes sharp and unsettlingly familiar. Ava whispered, Zarya, who is that? Zarya didn't respond. She couldn't. Her breath had stopped in her throat, heart pounding in her ears. That voice, smooth, calm, and cruel, was burned into her memory. Colonel Rand, she finally said, the name falling from her lips like a ghost. Dax blinked. You know him? Zarya's eyes didn't leave Rand's face. He was in command the day I got burned. He was the one who left me behind. Rand gave a mocking smile. Now, that's not fair, Zarya. I didn't leave you. I made a tactical decision. One, you survived. Reese raised his weapon. He's with them. He is them, Zarya said flatly. He turned mercenary after the fire, faked his death. He's been running Black Ops for whoever pays the most ever since. Rand chuckled, clapping his hands once. Impressive. You've done your homework, but I'm not here to fight. I'm here to offer you the truth. No one here wants your version of the truth, Ava snapped. But Zarya stepped forward. What truth? Rand raised a hand. From behind him, two more men emerged armed, but not aggressive. They carried a black folder. Rand opened it slowly, flipping through a series of photos and documents. Then he held one up. A photo of Zarya, much younger, in civilian clothes, beside a man in a decorated uniform, her father. You never knew who really ordered the strike, did you? Zarya's face paled. You're lying, am I? Rand offered the folder. It wasn't me. It wasn't even my mission. I was just the scapegoat. The order came from your father's unit. He signed off on the target without checking. Who was inside? Ava gasped. Your father? Impossible, Zarya whispered, grabbing the file and scanning it. The pages were marked confidential, but the details were specific. Dates, coordinates, her hometown, her school. The air around her grew heavy. Her knees buckled slightly, but Dax caught her. Even if this is true, Reese said, why tell her now? Because she's valuable, Rand said coolly. We've been tracking her, watching her, and the truth. Zarya's not just a survivor. She's a weapon. One we could use. One you could control. If you stop letting your emotions blind you. Zarya stood slowly, fury replacing her shock. You burned me alive. Then you tried to erase me. And now you want to use me. Rand nodded calmly. Yes, because that's the world we live in, and because you're finally ready. Before anyone could react, Rand dropped a smoke grenade and vanished into the haze. Ava fired twice into the mist. Reese cursed. Dax pulled Zarya behind cover. We need to go. Now. But Zarya didn't move. She stood staring into the smoke. Fists clenched. Reese shouted. We don't have time. Zarya turned sharply, her voice cutting like a blade. He knew everything. Everything. About the fire. About me. Even about my father. Dax put a hand on her shoulder. Then let's get you somewhere safe. Then we figure out what's real and what's manipulation. They ran the rest of the way to the river, hearts racing, weapons raised. When they reached the extraction point, the general was already there, bruised and limping but alive. His eyes landed on Zarya. What happened? She handed him the folder. He flipped through it, his face tightening. Where did you get this? Rand, she said. He's alive. The general looked away. We suspected but didn't have proof. And the orders in that file? Zarya asked. Are they real? The general hesitated. They were sealed, meant to stay buried. Zarya stepped forward. So you knew. The general's jaw clenched. I knew something was off, but I couldn't dig without risking court-martial. Your father was a war hero. The truth would have shattered his legacy and your name. Zarya's voice shook with rage. So you let the world believe I was careless, that I set the fire myself. I had no choice, the general said. You weren't supposed to survive. The silence after that sentence was louder than any explosion. Zarya took a slow breath. Well, I did survive. And now I'm going to expose every one of you who tried to erase me. That won't be easy, the general said. They'll come after you. Let them, she said. I'm not afraid of fire anymore. Suddenly, gunfire cracked from the ridge behind them. Rand's voice echoed from a speaker drone overhead. It's too late, Zarya. You were never meant to make it this far. But don't worry, we'll finish what we started. As bullets rained down, Zarya grabbed the radio. Get air support now. The general hesitated. I'm giving the order, she snapped, or I will. The team scrambled for cover. Return fire, lighting up the ridge. The river churned below. Helicopters roared in the distance. Zarya looked up, her burn scars glowing faintly under the fading sun. They want a weapon, she whispered. I'll give them something they'll never forget. Then she stood up in full view of the enemy fire and ran straight toward the ridge. ChatGPT said Zarya ran without hesitation, every breath burning in her lungs, every memory flashing like fire behind her eyes. Bullets zipped past her, slicing the air, cracking into rocks, but she didn't flinch. The ridge above was lit with gunfire, drones circling like vultures. Behind her, Dax shouted her name, Reese screamed for backup, and Ava cursed while trying to lay cover fire. But Zarya had already crossed the point of no return. She wasn't running for safety. She was running for reckoning. She dove behind a broken tree trunk just below the enemy's ledge and rolled, drawing her blade and pistol. Her scars itched, not from pain but from memory. She could hear them Rand's soldiers laughing above her, confident, cocky. She pressed her back to the splintered bark and whispered to herself, You wanted me to be a ghost. I'll be your nightmare. Zarya scaled the slope like a shadow, nimble despite the steep incline and the mud. She found a narrow passage, crawled through the thorns, and emerged 10 feet behind the snipers. They didn't hear her until it was too late. She disarmed the first one with a swift kick and elbowed him into silence before twisting the second into a chokehold, using his own gun to disable the third. It wasn't clean. It wasn't pretty. But it was Zarya's justice delivered one broken breath at a time. A crackle on the comms caught her attention. Rand's voice again. She's here. Pull back to position, Echo. Bring her in alive. She ripped the comms off one of the fallen snipers and growled. I'm already in, Rand, and you won't like how I leave. The general's voice finally echoed through her earpiece. Zarya, fall back. We're getting back up in 4 minutes. Hold your ground. But she shook her head. He's not running again. Not this time. She stormed toward the central bunker dug into the cliffside. Lights glowed through the cracks in the steel door. Motion sensors. Zarya knelt beside the panel, pulled out the toolkit Ava had shoved into her pack earlier, and began to disarm the lock. Her fingers moved from memory, not from technical training, but from all the makeshift hospital nights she'd learned to survive with fire-scarred hands. The lock hissed. The door slid open, and inside stood Rand. He didn't flinch, didn't move. Jas smiled. You came, he said. I told them you would. I knew you wouldn't run. Zarya raised her weapon. This ends now. Rand stepped back slowly, hands up. Before you shoot me, ask yourself, why did your father lie? To you? Why did the general cover it up? Why didn't anyone come for you that night? Her jaw tensed. Because you told them I was dead. No, Rand said. Because your survival was a liability. You weren't supposed to be the story. Your father signed the clearance because he thought you were at a boarding camp 60 miles away. I found the intel. I radioed the abort order. The general said no. Zarya's hand shook. You expect me to believe you wanted to save me? Rand reached slowly into his jacket and tossed a data chip on the ground. That has the black box transmission. My voice. The general's voice. Your father's coded message. The truth's on there. Zarya didn't move. The truth? The final missing piece. She picked it up. Why now? She asked. Why tell me this now? Rand exhaled. Because I thought I could use you. I thought if I reminded you who hurt you, you'd join me. But seeing you now, you're not mine to use. You never were. And that scares the hell out of people like him. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the cave entrance. Smoke poured in. Reese's voice boomed through the Zarya. We're coming in. But another voice followed, cold, commanding, deadly. The general. Zarya. Do not believe anything Rand says. He's trying to divide us. She stared at Rand. Is he lying? Rand held her gaze. Ask the chip. Zarya tucked it into her vest just as two shadows entered behind her. Dax and Ava both aimed their weapons at Rand. Back away, Dax said. We're getting her out of here. But then a sharp noise rang out, a single sniper shot from the ridge. Rand stumbled forward, clutching his chest. Blood bloomed across his shirt. His knees buckled. Sniper, Ava yelled, ducking. Dax pulled Zarya back as Rand fell to the floor, gurgling, reaching for her. Zarya watched the second file. Your name. It's all. He collapsed before he could finish. Dax turned toward the entrance. We've got to go now. But Zarya stood frozen, her mind racing. A second file. Ava pulled her arm. We'll find it later. They raced out through the smoke, dodging more fire as Reese and 2 more team members laid cover. The helicopters finally roared overhead, scattering the snipers. A ladder descended. Reese yelled, "Climb!" Zarya hesitated, looking back one last time at the bunker, at the smoke, at the trail of blood Rand had left. Then she climbed. Inside the chopper, her heart thudded louder than the rotor blades. She held the chip in her hand, staring at it. "What's on it?" Dax asked. Zarya looked at him. Answers. Ava leaned in. "So what now?" Zarya whispered. "Now we stop running. Now we burn their secrets." As the helicopter soared above the mountains, lightning split the sky in the distance. Zarya's scars pulsed with heat, from pain, but from purpose. The truth was coming, and it was going to set everything on fire. The moment Zarya inserted the data chip into the encrypted console inside the military safehouse, the entire room seemed to breathe differently. The air got heavier. Even the fluorescent lights flickered, as though they too were bracing for what was about to be revealed. Everyone was quiet. Dax, Ava, Reese, the medic from HQ, and 2 unfamiliar intelligence officers brought in by the general himself. But Zarya didn't trust the silence. She didn't trust anyone now, not after everything that had unraveled in the past 48 hours. And definitely not after watching Rand die before he could finish his final sentence. The screen blinked twice, then opened a series of archived files. Her fingers trembled as she clicked into the first one labeled Operation Phoenix. Field Report Z Miles Classified. The video began, and her world began to cave in. The footage showed a much younger General Harrow speaking in a war briefing. Behind him were images of Zarya's orphaned village, burning. "We anticipate minor civilian loss. The target site is hot. Non-essential assets cleared. The Miles girl Zarya has been located, but cannot be extracted without media exposure. Recommend silence protocol." Zarya's breath hitched. She paused the video. He knew I was alive. Dax stepped forward. "Zarya, you don't have to keep watching." "Yes, I do," she said, pressing play again. The screen shifted to a time-stamped black box recording from the night of the fire. Her father's voice came through. "This is Colonel Miles. My daughter is there. I repeat, my daughter is in the settlement. Do not strike." Then the general's voice. "Authorization denied. Collateral damage acceptable. We have no daughter." "Listed on site?" Zarya clenched her jaw so hard her teeth hurt. "He erased me, but that wasn't the worst part." The next file was titled, "Call Sign, Phoenix Reassignment Order." It contained a signed directive from General Harrow to assign her official military identity after the fire. He'd buried her name, and then quietly brought her into the academy as a new recruitsguard, orphaned, untraceable, and loyal only because she had no idea what had really happened. He had raised her from her trauma, and shaped her into a weapon. Was dead silent. "I was never rescued," Zarya said flatly. "I was repurposed." No one responded. Outside, helicopters hovered. Inside, the truth burned hotter than anything she'd felt before. "I want to confront him," she said. Reese looked up. "He won't just sit down for a chat." "I don't want a chat," she said, grabbing her gear. "I want justice." An hour later, they stood in the command center where General Harrow operated. The room was full of screens, personnel, and tension so thick it could be cut with a breath. Zarya walked in, not as a subordinate, but as someone who finally remembered who she was. The general turned, arms behind his back. "I heard you accessed the files. Don't pretend you're surprised," she said. "You knew this day would come." He looked at her calmly. "I did what I had to do." "You ordered the strike," she said. "You lied to my father. You lied to me. You buried me." "I protected the mission," he replied coldly. "The entire war effort depended on eliminating that location." "My mother died in that fire," Zarya said, voice shaking. "My neighbors, my friends, and you labeled them non-essential." "They were," he said, "to the war. You were the only one with long-term value." Ava stepped forward, furious. "You used her? She survived," he said. "She was trained, honored, saluted. That's more than most get." Zarya's hand hovered over her pistol. "You called me Phoenix because I rose from the ashes. But it was you who lit the match." Security moved closer. Dax tensed. Reese kept one hand near his weapon, but Zarya didn't reach for hers. Instead, she reached into her vest, pulled out a copy of the chip, and handed it to the intelligence officers behind her. "Everything's on there. The strike order, the cover-up." His voice, my father's voice. The officers stared at the general. "This is treason," he hissed. "No," Zarya said. "This is truth, and you're going to answer for it." Suddenly, the command door opened. A decorated woman in a 4-star uniform walked in. General Serrano, Director of Military Ethics. She looked at Harrow. "You're relieved of command? Effective immediately." Guards stepped in. The general tried to resist. "You can't," but they cuffed him before he could finish. Zarya didn't blink. As he was dragged out, Harrow turned one last time. "Everything you are, Zarya, came from me." She looked him dead in the eye. "No," Everything I am, survived, despite you. Later, back at the safe house, she sat alone at a table, watching the sunrise over the cliffs. Her scars were still there, burned deep, ugly, twisted, but now they told a full story. A story that had a beginning, and finally, an end. Dax came in with coffee. You okay? She nodded. For the first time, yeah. He handed her a letter. From HQ, they want to reassign you. Anywhere you want. She opened it. A blank form, a blank future. What will you choose? He asked. She looked out the window. Something that lets me protect the next girl who's left in the fire. And as the sun rose higher, casting golden light across her skin, the scars didn't look like pain anymore. They looked like armor. The world would remember her not as a mistake in a file, but as the call sign that burned through every lie they tried to bury. Phoenix, the girl who rose. The soldier they tried to silence.